students of class 6, welcome back to our social science class. Today we are going to take a look at the lesson 2 of history, that is Indus civilization. Do you all remember? Even in our last class we looked at the same lesson. So today we will be looking at the trade and transport that happened there, the dockyard that is at Lothal. Then we'll be looking at the leader in Mohenjo-daro. Then we'll be looking at the technology that they used. We'll be seeing the apparel and the ornaments, that is what they wore, and their occupation, that is like pottery, etc. We'll be able to know about their religious belief, their toy culture, and finally we will be looking at what happened to the Harappans now. We will be able to know why they aren't here anymore. So let's quickly move into our topic. First is trade and transport. Each and every one of us, when we want to go from one place to another, we go in a car, we go in a cycle, or we go by walking, or we take in public transport like bus or train, right? Let's see what these people did. So Harappans, they always used carts, that is, we have, right? We all would have seen, we will have 2 cows and then a carriage behind where a person would sit and drive the cow. So that is called a cart. So instead of the cow, they can have horses or buffaloes or donkeys or anything. So the Harappans also used carts with spokeless solid wheels. So you see there, right, the spokeless solid wheels in the picture? Yes, so that is how Harappans had the transport. And the trade is, Harappans were great traders. What did they trade? They usually traded jewelry items. So they used sticks with marks to measure. So when we trade, like when we sell something, we measure it, right? We have measurement. Like when we go to a jewelry shop, they have the measurement for the jewels, right? They say 1 gram, 2 gram. In the same way, when these people used to trade jewelry, they didn't have those weight machines. Instead, they had stick with marks to measure them. So that is about the trade and transport. Next, let's look at the dockyard at Lothal. So the dockyard is nothing but it is a shipbuilding yard at Mumbai. So a naval dockyard is a shipbuilding yard at Mumbai. So it's a huge place where you build ships, big ships which you see. Such a dockyard was found in Lothal too. So Lothal is in the tributary of Sabarmati river in Gujarat. So Lothal is also near to the Sabarmati river in Gujarat. And through this Lothal dockyard, we are able to conclude, we know that there was trade happening between the people of the Indus Valley civilization and others. So these ships were the proof that there was trade. Moving on to the next one is the leader, that is Mohenjo-daro. So here the leader you see in the picture, right? This is the leader for the people. And this leader had a band in his forehead, and likewise it also had a band in his right arm. So he had two bands, and he had his beard and his hair well shaved and well trimmed. And finally, we see that he is having a shawl, right? A shawl like a thing on his shoulder. And the shawl is said to have floral designs, that is, flower of rings, that is, the design had flowers and rings. So, even today, it is said that people use shawls which have these floral designs. So, that's all about the leader of Mohenjo-daro. So, moving on, let's look at the technology. So, they didn't have mobile phones or they didn't have weight machines like I said already. So the only thing they had was standardized weight and measurement. So the technology that they had was standardized weight and measurement. So it is nothing but, you see the stones at the right side, right? So yeah. So they measure using these stones. When it is bigger, they measure using the white stone, and when they want something to be cut smaller, they measure using the black stone, and that is how they measure. Example, the ivory scale that they had measured 1704 millimeter. So that's how they knew the measurements. So this was the only technology that they had. Moving on to the apparel and the ornaments that they had. So they always wore, that is apparel. Apparel is nothing but the cloth that they wore. So they always used cotton fabric and wool, and they didn't buy clothes outside. Instead, they used to yarn their own spun. So they used to spun the yarn, that is the wool and all which we see, the threads that we get in the shops. They used to get the threads, and then they used to yarn, they used to thread it, needle it, they used to give designs to it, and then they make a cloth out of it. Then these people use it and they wear it in their day-to-day life. And while coming to the ornaments, both men as well as women wore ornaments, and they had necklace, armlets, bangles, finger rings, ear stud, and anklets. So these were some of the things which they used to wear. Like we wear ring, we wear bangles, we wear chain and all, right? So in the same way, these people wore all these. And the ornaments were made up of gold, silver, ivory, shell, copper, terracotta, and precious stones. That is, we say, right? Diamond, ruby. Such precious stones were also used by these people, and they use such ornaments. So their clothing was made up of cotton and wool, and their ornaments were gold, silver, ivory, precious stones, and etc. So I hope you know about the clothing that they did and the ornaments that they wore. So moving on, let's see about their occupation. So their main occupation was not known, but they did agriculture, they did handicrafts, they did jewelry making, they did weaving, carpentry, and trading. So they were an all-rounder. So they did agriculture, they used to go to the fields, and when they're at home, they used to weave their own clothes, and then they made their own jewelry items. Then they made their own carpentry, like they will also be in need of chairs, right? So they make their own chairs, they do everything what and all they wanted. Not stopping there, they also had merchants and artisans. So they were also the ones who used to sail on the ship. So they not only there, they had even cattle, and they made use of the cattle. They used to make pots out of the potter's wheel, and this was one of the time pass that they had. They used to make beautiful pots. That's why they were called the toy age, which we'll be looking on later. So their occupation was nothing but they were either merchants, traders, or artisans. So moving on about the pottery. Pottery was practiced using the potter's wheel. It was well fired and red in color with beautiful painting in black. The broken pieces in pottery had animal figures and geometric shapes on it. So what do we see here? They didn't make pottery to sell them, but they made pottery to make their own use. So the pots were well fired. They showed them in the fire to make them firm and strong. And because of showing them in the fire, it turned so red. So when it was so red, they started painting in black color. And what did they paint there? They painted animal figures, that is, they drew animal pictures and geometric shapes like round or triangle or rectangle or boxes. Those are geometric shapes. So they had these beautifully done. That is about the pottery. Moving on to the religious belief. Each and every one of us has a religious belief, right? Some of us go to church, some of us go to mosque, some of us go to temple, but the people here did not have any specific things like that. They didn't go to temple or mosque or church, but they had their own female figurines, that is, they worshipped a female god. So how did they find this? The archaeologists, when they went in search of the ground and the place, they saw that there were more female figurines, that is, the statue of female god. So they came to a conclusion that the people there worship the goddess. Why did they worship them? For fertility. So they believe the goddess symbolizes fertility. So they always worship a female god. So that is their religious belief. So moving on about the toy culture that I already told you. They made pots, right? The same way with the clay, they made also small toys. Like we see here, right? Toys like carts, cow, then heads and limbs, and the cows and the animal they did, right? They always had movable head and limb. So when they shake their head, they were able to move. And they made clay balls, tiny doll, and then small monkeys. They made terracotta squirrels, like the squirrel eating nuts. Then they made a figure of a male dancer, and whatever they like, they used to make it with the use of clay or terracotta. The toys were mostly made up of terracotta, which showed they enjoyed playing. So as they enjoyed playing, they made toys, and thus they were called the toy culture. So finally, what happened to the Harappans? We saw about how they built their houses, so big houses. We also don't have so big houses, right? We have probably 1 room or 2 room in our house. We never have a garden or a swimming pool in our house. But they had garden, they had swimming pool, that is the big near a well, and then they had very good drainage system. Everything was good with them, and they had wonderful assembly hall. They had wonderfully planned roads and all. They had ornaments, they had pottery, they had so many occupations, they had carts, they had everything. They had trade done in them. But what happened to them? Why did the Harappans vanish? Where did they go? So you know why they left the place? because they had repeated floods. Even now we have floods, right, where our houses are filled with water. We have no other go but we vacate our houses. In the same way, these people had lots of floods coming in, so they left the place. And then they had ecological changes, that is the climate changes, like in the natural calamity there were disasters, that is flood, earthquake, and more. There was climatic changes because of the deforestation, and the people were ruined because of the invasions, that is outsiders coming in. They started ruling them, they started dominating them, they started taking away everything these little people had. So this was the major reason why all the Harappans ran away from this place, and now we see that the place has nobody in it, and that is why the archaeologists has found them. They have researched and found them, and we have learnt about them as a part of the Indus civilization. So I hope all of you enjoyed this lesson, knowing about the Harappan culture and everything they had, right? It all reminds us of the movies that we saw about the olden days, right? Yes. So this is all about our second lesson in this civilization. So I hope you understood it well, students. So please go and fill in whatever you are able to fill in your back exercises and study it every day. Okay, students? So take care, students. Until we meet in the next class, a bye from me and thank you.